So this is just gonna be a reaction video or just a quick recap of the regular season of 2024 to 2025, right? For all 30 teams, right? You just wanted my quick reaction, Hopefully the video goes short, but it's 30 teams, right? And you know, each by each team, right? So whether it's the injuries or not, but yeah, that just factor, right? So which team surprised me and which team did not surprise me, right? So yeah, so the worst team in the NBA right now, I think the worst record is the Utah Jazz, right? Yeah, obviously they're gonna be a lot of the team, but then the OKC Thunder has the best record in the NBA, 68 wins and 14 losses, and the Utah Jazz is 17 to 65. So obviously they're gonna be on the rebuild for like quite some time. So let's go over the Western Conference. So the Utah Jazz are 17 of 65, right? So obviously this team is just young and they need plenty of rebuild, right? Yeah, they're just like a bunch of, no-name teams, and I don't know, lower in marketing and all stuff, but the Jazz, nobody really talks about, nobody really cares, right? So they're going to be relevant for a while. That's all I'm going to say. And then you got the New Orleans Pelicans. My suggestion is just trade Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson is just, a piece of garbage, overhyped up player, Get rid of Zion, He's just a big problem for that Pelicans team. And I don't know what else. They just have so many problems, honest with you, right? I mean, yeah, 21 of 61. They're just not looking very good right now. So, and also they just have to be on a rebuild. Just get rid of all the, and also they have CJ McCollum and all stuff. So yeah, and we go, and then we have the San Antonio Spurs. Now the San Antonio Spurs has dropped a bit. It's because of an injury, right? Although they have Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama, I expect this team to be at least in the play-in, but yeah, it's the injuries, unfortunately, Victor Wembanyama. Hopefully his career does not end because I heard he has a blood clot or something like that, but man, NBA has too many injuries, man. I don't know, like, what's wrong with these professional players? Like, they don't even take care of themselves, and this is why, they just get injured, and their career gonna end, prematurely. So yeah, the Spurs are too young, and they don't look that dangerous right now. So, and then you got the Portland Trailblazers, right? Although the San Antonio Spurs are 34 and 48, so then you got the Portland Trailblazers. They're 36 and 46, right? And yeah, they have a really bright future. They look decently better than last year, but it's just not enough to be in the play-in, to be honest. I think next year, or maybe in the next couple years, they're gonna be a threat in the West, right? So don't know this guy's name, but Portland's looking a little bit better, right? And then you got the Suns that has the same record as the Portland Trailblazer. I say that these 5 teams are just still going. The Phoenix Suns are the biggest disappointment, and I am not surprised. And they have a lot of problems, just having 3 big stars, and they still couldn't get the job done. Like not getting gel, they have so many personal issues, so many player problems, just a whole mess everywhere, and they just fire Mike Budenholzer. So dang, it sucks to be in the 11th seed, with all that high expectation. The Suns, are trash, and they're just pathetic again. Booker, Kevin Durant, Beal, they had no trade clause. Like they spend, they're the most expensive team, and they still couldn't get the job done, with all that superpower, with all that talent. Yeah, the Suns look really terrible, man. I don't know, but this organization is gonna be in shambles, right? So And then you got the Dallas Mavericks 39 of 43. I mean, yeah, just after the Luka trade, they got Anthony Davis, Max Christie, Kyrie went now injury. I'm glad that Anthony Davis got up, and hopefully, the Mavericks can, get in the playoffs, but I highly doubt that they're still not going to be far in the postseason. They're in the 10th seed, 39-43, right? But yeah, and then you got Sacramento Kings, at 40 or 42. They're pretty much the same as last year, right? Nothing different, right? I mean, let's go back to the Suns. Let's go to the Kings. The Kings, they're still a playing team last year, and this year they fall in again. They just fire, Mike Brown and just trade away, De'Aaron Fox. For I don't know, like, whatever player they get, right? And I still feel like they're out of playing right now. So they just got eliminated to the Mavericks. So yeah, they're just a mediocre team, I feel like, Sacramento's still going nowhere, right? They haven't been relevant since like 2023, where they first get eliminated to the Golden State Warriors in Game 7, right? So yeah, and then you got the Memphis Grizzlies, at number 8, they're 8 games above Sacramento, like 48 of 34, so 16 games above 500. I mean, not 16, 14 games above 500, right? The Memphis Grizzlies, right? Obviously, this team's immature. I feel like this team isn't going to go nowhere, right? So they're pretty much, the same, just like Sacramento Kings, nothing different, But yeah, there's still going to be a first round exit even if they make it to the playoff, right? I don't trust in the Grizzlies, right? And seriously, they need to trade Ja Morant because Ja Morant gets injured too much and this guy is still immature, right? And he's still, making a mockery of the NBA. So yeah, his behavior is still, very childish. So, and then, you got the Golden State Warriors, Golden State Warriors are supposed to be, not in the playoff, right? But ever since they got Jimmy Butler, they're still going to be relevant, right? So, yeah, so obviously they made it to the playoff, facing against the Houston Rockets. Same record, as the Grizzlies. Same record, right? So 40 of, 34, but they can be a very dangerous team, But yeah, I know that Jimmy Butler does not show up in the regular season, but he always, goes off in the playoffs. So yeah, if a team can somehow, shut down Jimmy Butler, then the Golden State Warriors are in trouble, right? So yeah, and then you got the Minnesota Timberwolves, that traded, Karl Anthony Towns, Yeah, the Timberwolves were struggling. They had a real struggle in the beginning season, but then they got a little bit better here and there, and this team is still not gonna go anywhere, right? So yeah, nothing much about say about Timberwolves. They're pretty much the same, And then you got the LA Clippers, whereas they've been dealing with injuries, And when it comes to the playoff, like this team looks totally different, right? I mean, yeah, can the Clipper, like fold up again, when it comes to playoff, right? They're always good in the regular season, but can they finally show up in the playoff, right? Can they finally get the job done? So, yeah, the Clippers supposedly also, a relevant team, ever since Paul George left, right? I feel like the Clippers, to me, they should have never got Paul George, right? And also you should have kept SGA, right? So yeah, Clipper just made one of the dumbest trade that happened like back in 2019, right? So yeah, but the Clipper did surprise me a little bit. I mean, they have Norman Powell, that has a very good, and also James Harden. I thought James Harden's gonna ruin this team, but somehow like when the team goes to the Clipper, they somehow play really well, right? For some reason, I get it. Clippers not, high expectation over there, right? So, yeah, you play for different teams, players just, have different performance. It's that simple. So, and you got the Denver Nuggets, Yeah, Denver Nuggets, I feel like they're still gonna go nowhere. They lost a few pieces of they're in the 4th seed right now. So I feel like they're the same as last year, right? They haven't gotten better. And then you got the Los Angeles Lakers, that are sitting number 3, right? I feel like they're still pretenders. So the Lakers and Denver and the Clippers, they all have the same record, 50 of 32, right? So yeah, the Lakers has been, a really different team, with JJ Redick also, but I still feel like the Lakers are still gonna fool everybody, right? But yeah, they're still, a decent team, but they're just not a championship contender. They don't look like championship contender to me. Unless if everybody gets injured or something weird happens, then of course, the Lakers will look like a dangerous team, but they still cannot fool me. So, and then there's a huge, climb from last year to this year, right? Is the Houston Rockets. They're 50 of 32, right? So yeah, the Houston Rockets, shout out, to Ime Udoka, they got, Dylan Brooks, the Sengun guy, and they have like a whole tons of young pieces over there, right? The Houston Rocket, right? Are surprising number 2. And then, no be surprised, everybody knew, the OKC Thunders are going to be a really good team, right? And they're number 1, having the best record of the NBA, right? So, yeah, out of the Western Conference, I say the Rockets did surprise me and the Clippers surprised me, right? And, the Lakers, but then, Lakers been having, really easy schedules, that's what I heard. So, yeah, the Lakers, not impressive at all. So, everyone else pretty much the same, but the Suns are the biggest disappointment, right? The Phoenix Suns. And then you got, the other young teams, get better here and there, so. That's West for your information, so. And then let's go over to the Washington Wizards, right? The Washington Wizards are just, the same old pathetic team, Then, okay, you should not even pay attention to all. They're going to be a lottery team for like quite some time. And still not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So, less than 20 wins. Well, 18 of 64. So, and then you got the Charlotte Hornets, like LaMelo Ball. That team is, I don't want to pay attention to that team. The team that's just lottery, I just don't even talk about it, honestly. Just mention the record. 19, 63. The record, right? Going nowhere. The Philadelphia 76ers has been taking a big hit. And they are a very disappointing team. Trade Joel Embiid, get rid of Paul George, and start all over, man. Right? You Sixers are going nowhere, right? That's just to be honest with you. So, 24-58, like, I thought, like, this team's supposed to look dangerous, but yeah, they just have a bunch of clowns over there that just have weak leadership. Man, they end up in the 13th seed. They look really terrible. So, I don't know, man, what the Sixers, but I suggest you fire Daryl Morey, right? Because he is the majority of the blame, right? Fire coach here and there. They just fired Doc River. They just fired some other head coach. And then, this coach needs to be fired, right? I forgot, like, Nick Nurse, right? Yeah, so the Brooklyn Nets also got, nowhere. Oh, yeah, remember that the Lakers did some trade here and there, I remember the Andrew Russell back to the Brooklyn Nets, right? The Brooklyn Nets are just, a young team and not much expectation. So, yeah, 26 of 56. And then Toronto Raptors, they're going nowhere as well, They're a young team. I mean, hopefully they can grow, to get better, right? The same thing, I don't talk about these bomb feeders. Like, there's just a bunch of young team, inexperienced team, That's just like so undeveloped. And then you got the Miami Heat, 37 of 45. So yeah, they made the play. They just beat the Chicago Bulls, right? The Bulls, Miami Heat and Bulls. Ever since the Miami don't have Jimmy Butler, they look like kind of mediocre team, right? I mean, they could. Their potential is just the first round exit, right? And they're just probably on a rebuild, right? Same thing with the Chicago Bull, that team is just, they got in the plane, right? I'm not sure if they were in the plane last year or not, but to me, not much drawing attention here, right? And then 39-43, then you got the Atlanta Hawks, is Trae Young gonna carry this team, right? So yeah, they're in the AC right now, and I gotta look at the Hawks, right? The Hawks, yeah, they just have Trae Young. I don't know what's the issue with the Hawks, but they're a team that still go nowhere. Sorry, this, I'm just looking at, another device right here that shows me, the NBA standings. So, sorry, it's a little slow because, oh, there it is. And then you got the Orlando Magic, dealing with injuries. I feel like they should not be in this position. Without injuries, I think they would have been better, to be honest with you, right? The Orlando Magic, right? Paul, Ben Carroll or something, or Frank Wagner and all stuff, right? Yeah, I know, like, why, some teams, fall behind, why some teams point, just, injuries and all that stuff, right? That I don't really look into, right? I mean, they still suck even without injuries, right? So that's a quick recap over there, right? That also tells me, why some teams are struggling, just injuries, right? So yeah, the Magic, I've been paying attention to the Magic a little bit, right? I mean, for the first month of the NBA, the Magics are undefeated in their home crib, right? They were like 10-0 or something like that in the home, and then they start losing a lot more game at home when the season progress, when they like goes along. So yeah, but hopefully the Magic can get better after their season somehow it's gonna end pretty soon, right? Depending on the playoffs, right? So, and then you got the biggest surprise here, the Detroit Pistons has been a big surprise to everyone, right? This team has been a very pathetic team last year. Last year, they almost broke, the longest, losing streak in NBA history, right? And I feel like the NBA competition has gotten, a lot worse and is a lot weaker. And the Pistons could not get a win in 2 months, man. Right? From all the way from like before Halloween all the way up to almost New Year. This Pistons team only won 14 games from last year, and now they won, and now they got all the way past the play-in, and even on the 6th seed, they have exceeded everybody's expectation, right? The Detroit Pistons team has been the biggest shock of the NBA, right? You shout to the coach staff, to the coaching staff, you shout to the players and all stuff, right? Willing to put hard work. So the Detroit played tremendous. They got some really better in the offense, defense, and every statistic has gone better. That's why they're winning they did miles better than they did last year, right? They were even worse than the Washington Wizards. And the Wizards stay the same, and they're like all the way to the top, right? So not to the top, but 6th seed, right? The Detroit Pistons has, really big surprised me, right? And then the Milwaukee Bucks, Damian Lillard problem, right? Please get rid of this guy, man. Please, man, Bucks. Right? That was the number one reason. Damian Lillard is not a winner, and he does not play defense, and he's a very bad leadership. So yeah, so that's why the Bucks are in the fifth spot. And then you got the Indiana Pacers, they're pretty much the same, Didn't surprise me much there. And then you got the Knicks, that's been very inconsistent, I expect the Knicks to be better, but they look the same because they're just inconsistent, right? Yeah, and a very inconsistent team. And then, you got the Boston Celtic, okay, we all know the Boston's, expectations supposed to be high. And then the Cleveland Cavaliers, have the best record of the Eastern Conference, right? Elvin Mobley, Jared Allen, this Cavaliers team is looking so dangerous, right? And I'm glad, the Clevelands are this good, right? And I have to tell you why. Because everybody is sick of this LeBron propaganda, right? Or the media, right? They say that Cleveland did nothing for him, when it comes to LeBron James, people say that, he never had enough this, never had enough this, he never get enough help. He's been getting a lot of helps, right? But he doesn't utilize these helps. That's the LeBron problem, right? And then Gilbert, the owner of the Cavaliers, saying that, he could win a championship without LeBron James. And this could very well be, the Cavaliers can have a chance of winning a championship, but is this enough, right? And I won't be surprised if the Cavaliers fail again. Like I said, inexperience, they still inexperienced. And the only reason why they fell short is because, last year they had injuries, right? But yeah, can the Cavaliers get the job done, right? So yeah, I expect Cavaliers and Boston, to be in the Eastern Conference, finals, right? So yeah, I think the Cleveland has a best chance of knocking out the Boston Celtic, right? Every other team, they have no chance of being the Celtic, right? No chance. If, injuries is not a factor, right? So, of course, right? But yeah, the Cavaliers, they've been having, a massive, winning streak, and nobody talks about them for some reason, because this is why the NBA sucks, all they do talk about LeBron James and, and other, nonsensical thing, they don't talk about these type of team, that's supposed to grow, right? They don't talk about OKC Thunder, they don't talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, and maybe not the Celtics, right? And they don't even talk about Celtics. I don't even remember that, right? But yeah, that's going to be a very interesting series. Celtic versus, the Cleveland Cavaliers, if they make it, right? So, yeah, the Cavaliers, have really, top-notch defense, right? So, yeah, and also, and they have a really good coach there, right? So, yeah, the Cavaliers also did surprise me too, right? I don't know what seed they were last year, 4th or 5th seed, and they faced the Magic, right? So, yeah, the Cavaliers look really strong and all that stuff. So, yeah, I figure out why the Knicks are inconsistent, because they just got, a new player like Karl Anthony Towns, right? And I don't know what other new players they also got. So, yeah, I think that's it for the regular season, for all, 30 teams.